Hello, everyone. Welcome to Synergita webcast. Today we have another episode as we bring expert views, opinions, and best practices for HR community. Let's start by giving introduction to today's guest, Philippa Penfold. Pip is the CEO and co-founder at People Collider. She helps HR leaders with evaluating technology and bringing it and people together. She regularly speaks about Industry 4.0, AI, RPA, and virtual reality. Thank you, Pip, for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks so much. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, Pip, I want to start our conversation with People Collider, right? How did you come up with this name, and what's the vision for the organization?
Great question to open. People Collider came about, the name, because we recognized that oftentimes people and technology were colliding and we wanted to increase the frequency of that collision to help HR people learn and understand new and emerging technologies and how they are changing the workplace and the function of human resources. Interestingly, you're just at the cusp, asking at the cusp of a change where we're switching of our focus to integrating intelligences. So how we bring multiple intelligence, such as artificial and human, together in the workplace, pardon me, more effectively, rather than this collision, much more of a meeting of the minds, if you will, beyond the augmentation, how we can design our workplaces, our jobs, and our processes to make full use of what the advantages of different intelligences bring to the workplace.
Sure. And so at this point, do you want to share your views on the evolution of HR tech space?
Yeah, sure. Well, for me, it started a long time ago. I was inflicting PeopleSoft again upon countless thousands of employees back in the days when employee self-service and manager self-service was relatively new. It's changed significantly since then, of course, but there are a couple of things that stayed the same. I think that HR still sees technology as a way of accomplishing efficiencies in the workplace. Technology originally came in, we saw it as a way of streamlining processes, of cutting costs. You know, when I entered HR, it was all about getting the cost down. Whatever you do, make that process efficient, get the cost down. And technology was embraced as a tool to be able to do that. Ironically, the tools in those days were not as efficient at efficiencies as they are today. But we've moved along, and we've moved on from the old on-premise HRIS software. And it's gone in multiple ways. We see everything from ERP in full suite, or bundled with CRM, all the way through to bespoke tools and based on separate technologies such as virtual reality and artificial intelligence. The way that it has been evolving, I tend to think it has been driven by the ability of technology and the imagination of founders and vendors. This is good in some ways, but not in others. I found that overall, most HR software vendors, they don't come from HR, they don't understand HR, and oftentimes they're not solving an HR problem. And now this is not to say they all are. Obviously, some do so and do so very well. But we can't say that all of them do. And I think it's because a lot of them have seen what is possible, and they are able to imagine what is possible with this technology, and they build something on top of it. Now, of course, HR not understanding that technology, we love the bright, shiny things. The technology, we think it's really exciting. We're told to digitize, so we want to bring a lot of this technology into our workplace. But there's a little bit of a mismatch on occasion between the way that the technology achieves its goals and what the problems that HR needs to solve, whether it's for the business, for their employees, or for itself as a function. So I see this evolution as it's not a smooth or an even evolution, certainly by the way that HR embraces technology at the same time as the way that vendors have leveraged technology to create tools for human resources to use. I think that this will continue for quite some time. I think the current focus over the human side of the workplace, we've seen D&I, and so forth, mental health, being a big focus, post just coming onto the tail end of the pandemic, and so it sort of distracted away from the technological discussions. But I think once we come back on, it'll be very interesting to see how the shift away from tech or shift to a focus towards something more human evolves and influences the future evolution of the technology. So a lot in play, a lot evolving at a very, very fast pace. You need a full-time job to be able to keep an eye on everything that's going on in the market.
Sure. That's sure. And what do you think is going on with Industry 4.0? What is different in Industry 4.0?
In fact, there is a lot different in Industry 4.0 for all of us as consumers, as employees, and obviously for business. I want to focus though on what it means for human resources. And in fact, in many ways, it is a scale up of what we've seen that's come before. If I rewind again 20 years back, implementing PeopleSoft, one of the key arguments or key components of the business case was access to reports. You can, to managers, you can run your own reports. Of course, they never did, but you could run your own reports. And the argument for a single platform was being able to bring the technology, the data into a single location upon which to report. Interestingly, Industry 4.0 and the technologies we have today, many of the arguments that I hear HR and vendors using is access to real-time data. And then the difference between today and yesteryear is it is access to real-time data and our ability not just to gather it and to analyze it, but to action it very quickly. Let me give you an example. We're all familiar with the Likert scale, the smileys, from 0 to 5, from very happy to a grouchy frown. Anyone who has flown through Changi Airport will remember that they have those in every bathroom. Well, actually, I'm not sure about the men, but they've definitely got them in every lady's bathroom. And what I wanted to see is to understand how it was connected. So one day after I used the bathroom, I did several cross spaces, sort of waited and hit more because I realized one may not register, and sat back and waited. And within 5 minutes, someone turned up to clean the bathroom. Now, it's all very well putting the technology into the bathroom to find out how your customers were feeling. The difference is the action that was taken upon it. The analysis, everyone was very happy until somebody wasn't. Now everybody's unhappy, or at least I was unhappy. So the bathroom must need action taken, cleaning. Now, in the old days, cleaners had a route that they needed to stick to. They went to bathroom A, bathroom B, bathroom C. And if it got dirty in the middle, then that was just bad luck until it came up on their schedule again. That's what they did. Now, but it's changed. So I want, for HR to think not just gathering the information, but what it took to take action upon that information. The interface that was necessary for the cleaner, their ability to use it and to understand it, a different way of managing the operation to how it used to be managed. Now, Industry 4.0, in my view, for human resources, while there are many differences, many challenges that will arise. For me, this is the one that we need to address, let's say, the most urgently, because many tools give access to real-time data, but the real-time action is lagging in many HR departments. The other thing that is changing and I think will be a challenge tomorrow rather than today is the nature of blockchain technology and how we as in HR, will no longer own data. We will borrow access to employees' data while they are employed. Now, for most HR people, this is very uncomfortable because we're the ones that are responsible for data. We are the ones that are accountable for ensuring it is private and share the responsibility and security with IT. The notion that employees own all their data is something that we are perhaps not ready for yet.
Okay.
And they grant their access. Now, I think this also comes in play with real-time data, but how we treat data, how we view our role as data custodians will need to change to embrace many of these newer technologies.
Right. You briefly touched on the challenges for HR tomorrow, and I want to dive a little deeper into that. So, what do you believe will be the key challenges for HR tomorrow?
Yeah, look, I think it'll be quite different to what we're seeing today. We've got, the focus on diversity and inclusion, engagement, labour skill shortages, mental health. A lot of things that have come out from the pandemic have some topics like D&I have been exacerbated or magnified. Others have come to the forefront where they weren't before, such as mental health. But things like the skills shortage, this is a continuation of where we were before. We had skills shortage in certain jobs before, and we will have them long after. World Economic Forum has reported on this significantly. And I think that we're going to continue to see a challenge around the labour skills that is necessary in business. So for me, one of the first things when I think about tomorrow, and when I say tomorrow, I do mean sort of, 2, 5, 10 years. I think this skill shortage issue will remain a problem for some time to come. The other things that I think is integrating the technology into Josh Person calls it the flow of work, but I think it's more than that, because understanding it as a flow, we usually are simply adding the technology onto an existing process rather than redesigning a process into more of an integrated social technical system, rather than a single. Now, consumers have done this very well. We've got a way to go in HR and with the technology and how we are able to design jobs and design companies alongside this space. So we have I think this is going to be a big challenge. This to me also links with the productivity challenge. Many of the arguments for adopting technologies to improve productivity. This has been the argument for many companies all the way up to countries. There's some very interesting research that's come out of MIT by a professor called Darren Acemoglu, and he has shown that, in fact, with all the technology, productivity has not increased. So it begs the question, why not? And that question he hasn't looked at in more detail. And unfortunately, many people are not looking, because it's this merging of sort of business and economics and the technology. And of course, technology vendors don't tend to like the idea that, in fact, it's not unlocking productivity. We've seen it in Singapore. Now, putting aside the pandemic, in Singapore, the government was very focused on productivity, and as part of that push, focused on the adoption and embracing of technology by companies. But it's had a very minor impact. To me, one of the key things is because we are trying to unlock the potential of technology separate to unlocking the potential of employees, of people. This is this notion of integrating intelligences. How can we leverage the best of technology, the best of an artificial intelligence, and the best of human technology at the same time? So for me, one of the key challenges is this integration of technology in the workplace, being able to unlock productivity, but designed the systems of work in such a way that the technology brings out the best in us and we can bring out the best in technology. The data obviously is a component of that, which is going one step further to what I was talking about before, because we need to understand and be able to use that data to drive many of these technological systems.
Right, and those are two key points. Yeah, sure. So I think you mentioned two key points there, right? I mean, one is upskilling employees, The second is integration of technology into system of work to unlock the best out of us, right? So how can HR help companies prepare for those challenges?
Look, I think that at the start, if I think about a lot of HR teams that I know, one of the things that I think we need to focus on is making sure that we've got very effective cross-functional relationships. So we can't do this alone. We need to do it with other departments. Now, in many organizations, most of the HR and the IT people don't tend to sit, closely together. In fact, they don't tend to work very closely together unless there's a specific project. I think some of the good groundwork to be able to make this work is very efficient, very effective and productive cross-functional relationships. If HR, and this is at every level, not just at the senior level, every level throughout all departments. Without our ability to work effectively with one another, we will not be able to co-design workplaces that encompass both of them. The other thing I think is HR should not shy away from presenting the human side. Now, that's not an anti-technology side. Now, I think this idea that you're either human or you're technology. I think HR, to be able to present the human side alongside technology, needs to understand both. But we still need to, and we must present the notion of and the importance of the human dimension. We're doing that very well at the moment with the challenges that are in play, and I think we need to continue doing that when we bring technology into play. And so that when it doesn't matter what table we are sitting at, that whole argument of seat at the table, we need to be, while we're representing the human side, we are also able to do it in a way that combines it, pardon me, with the technological or the finance or so forth. That's more around the integration, more so than it is the labour skills. I think the skill shortage. In terms of that one, I think that every company has a role to play. I think that too many companies are sitting back, and I do appreciate the challenge. Small, medium-sized companies, the cost of investing in development is high, much more than it is for the multinationals per employee. And I do encourage everyone to do something, and for all the HR people in some way, shape, or form to work out how they can help develop those skills, because everybody working together in this will help ensure that we are not held back from the shortage of specific and necessary skills.
Sure. And so when we talk about technology, when we talk about technologies that propel organizations, right, what are the key considerations for HR when evaluating technology?
So we're evaluating technology before today. So I love this question because I'm often asked which technology to buy. Now, of course, here I'll say Synergita, but regardless of who asks in HR, my counter question is always, what is the problem that you are trying to solve? Now, what I find more often than not is HR has not been able to define their problem or their opportunity clearly enough. So when they come down to evaluating the technology, then they don't have a clear criteria. It's not, they get bogged down into talking about functionality and how cool an app looks or how much a manager may want to, use an interface. If you can solve a problem and a problem that matters, we need to be able to quantify the problem. Then we have already a way of evaluating technologies. Now, this also helps us get rid of a lot of the technologies that are in the marketplace. Anyone who has looked to buy tech lately, over the last 5 years, there is no shortage. There are thousands of technologies that are available for nearly every problem that we could imagine. But every single one manifests a little bit differently, the way that the solution works. If we understand our problem, if we are able to define it, then we'll know exactly what it is that we are looking for. And you can get rid of 80% of what's in the market just by defining your problem. So the key consideration for when you're starting the evaluation process is to forget the technology and think about the problem. Let me give you a little example of what I
Sure.
said to try and separate sort of problem and tech. It's still, I think it's still important, but leave, online leave. A lot of SMEs and in the old days, multinationals move down the online leave process. In the old days, you take down your Word document, you type it up, you print it out, and you'd go and talk to your manager. Now, of course, in the old days, we thought about that, or you emailed it and emailed the form, or if they were remote. Now, if you think about that process, the most important part was not actually the form and the logging of it. The most important part of that was the conversation with the manager. But that's from the employee's point of view. From HR's point of view, the difficulty was making sure that those forms did not go astray. The making sure of to ensure that anyone who was given leave was appropriately recorded, so that we didn't have leave liabilities, skyrocketing when actually people were taking holidays. So the problem for an employee was not as apparent as it was was not the same as a problem for HR. The problem for HR was records. Keeping accurate, up-to-date records. And that linked to finance because leave is counted as a liability. So we need to understand exactly how much we have leave in the company. And this drives a lot of the policy. Some companies have, use it or lose it by the end of the 12 months. This is one of the reasons why. So the problem for HR and the business is very different than the problem for an employee. In fact, giving them an app may not solve a problem at all. It might if it was a remote, if they were remote, or if the manager had a very wide span of control and a very complex rostering system, so that it was not the interaction, the one-on-one interaction between an employee and a manager to discuss a period of leave was not as important. But simply giving employees an app to apply for leave didn't, for many white-collar workers, didn't solve any problems at all. Made it a little bit easier. But of course, the key for us was still a conversation with the manager. So it didn't matter whether you did it on an app or you did it on email or you did it on a Zoom. It still had to have that conversation. Of course, when it comes to selling the tech into the company, HR, what do we say? Oh, it's going to be so much easier for you. Look at this fabulous app. That's not what we needed at all. We needed to solve. So this is why I say be really clear on the problem. If we needed to make sure that the records were kept appropriately, we needed something that would be enough for them to use it. But we didn't want to, promise them the earth and think that it was going to solve their problems, because it actually did not solve employees' problems at all. Arguably, in some cases, it made it worse because it bifurcated the process from the conversation with the manager. Some leave systems include the two, but not all. So you can see the difference between being really clear on your problem versus getting distracted by how cool the tech is in a funky app or a nice interface or a fantastic dashboard, and really defining the problem and the group of people whose problem you are solving before you get into any evaluation process.
Right. That is so helpful. Define the problem and the users. Define the problem that you're trying to solve. Another popular question that we have, Pip, today is full suite or best of breed. What are your views about those options?
Yeah, look, it's a great question, and there is no one right answer. There is a one right answer for every company, and I obviously can't answer it for every company, but every company needs to answer it for themselves. And what might be the answer one day may not be the answer the next day. So we always need to balance the advantages and the disadvantages of each of them. Some of the advantages of a single system, a full suite system, it's easy to buy. You're only dealing with one vendor, so usually that vendor response is actually, no, I wouldn't say it was better, but it's you only have a single point of contact, or what's with a single vendor. In many cases, the way that the infrastructure is working within the system means that the data flow, the integration across different functions has already been established, whereas if you're using a best of breed combination, you are building many of those connections. But in my view, the disadvantages in many cases outweigh. It is a one size fits none. Now, I spent many times of my life trying to change an HR process to fit a technology. In fact, a study that was done back in 2019 showed that over 50% of respondents said that the technology has changed their process 50% or more. So they're changing processes, not to the optimal process, but to the process that has been deemed as optimal by a process engineer as part of the system. They also don't let customization. It's the argument's the same as they used to be. You customize, you pay. Once you tailor it, you would have the options to integrate upgrades and all sorts of things. I think the biggest problem with the integrated or the full suite systems is that today they are taking up the lion's share of the budget, but they are not solving the lion's share of the problems. In the old days, because that's what we did, we spent the disproportionate, a very large amount of the budget into these systems. And today we're still doing that. In my mind, a full suite is good as a central system, but best of breed to understand the key problems that you need to solve is more important for business. And I believe that this is where companies can achieve their competitive advantage, because it's not the presence of a technology or a particular technology or not. It is the way that they have designed the ecosystem specifically to either solve key problems for them or their industry, or to leverage opportunities in their market. So it does require a greater skill set on the part of HR and a better working relationship with IT and a different view and approach from IT. But we are able to find a tool that will solve the most meaningful, the most costly, the most opportunistic problems. Implementation tends to be quicker, and they usually can customize depending on what we need. Integration can be difficult. The whole notion that data must be integrated to report on does not work. The APIs, everything that we can do these days, data flow is manageable. It may be a little more challenging, but generally speaking, it is possible today. It may not have been sort of a decade ago, but definitely is today. And of course, you're managing multiple vendors rather than managing over one. So it just depends. If you've got a workplace that with very low skill set in the HR department around managing vendors, and an IT department that prefers single vendors, they're trying to consolidate to manage cost, that might be the best solution for that company. Another company may decide, that they want to go down the best of breed to solve key problems that are typical in their industry, and if they can solve them, then they will offer them a competitive advantage against competitors. It depends, is the answer. It really depends.
Sure. And Pip, when you think about these beyond the obvious legal requirements, what are the privacy and security challenges that HR should be aware of?
Yeah, look, I'll start with the security because it's actually relatively simple. We're all very familiar with cybersecurity, and by security we mean making sure that people who shouldn't have access don't have access to data. And we're pretty good at this. IT is good at this, and this is certainly not my space in terms of being able to advise on better cybersecurity or technological security. The area of privacy that I think is going to emerge. So we're all very familiar. I know I'm speaking to HR people, and they will know GDPR and all sorts of different data privacy legislation. But I want to take that one step forward and say that privacy today, the privacy of employees' data, is actually more about trust than law. Let's just assume everybody is legal, okay, because we should be. What then happens? Now, employees have a very large digital footprint in the workplace. We produce all sorts of data points. And many of the technologies, many of the vendors are able to pick up on it and to use it. I've seen a number of tools that look at how to identify flight risks, employees who want to leave the business. And they put all sorts of things in play to be able to nudge managers and employees into certain different behaviours to reduce the likelihood of flight risk. Now, HR love this. Of course, we don't want our good employees to go. Hiring is hard enough right now. If we can hold on to our employees, we will. But if we think about the data points that are being picked up on, their communications, their chats, their emails. Now, we may be legally permitted to use this data, but should we use this data? If we choose to use it, what do we tell employees? Do we tell employees? How are employees going to benefit from this? So I think this notion of privacy over and above law really is about how we communicate with employees and how much employees trust us to use the data that they produce in the workplace and we can legally use for their benefit as much as for the business's benefit. So for me, that's that the trust is more important in the privacy and data space. Beyond once you're legally compliant, that's the space we need to look at.
Sure. You earlier spoke about how HR buyers should define the problem and the users, the problem that they're trying to solve. But often we get questions on how should HR leaders pitch technology procurement to management. What are your views on that?
Good question. And a lot of them really struggle with this. It comes back, you're right, it comes back to the problem. But it depends on how we've been able to quantify the problem. Let me give you an example. We've got 3 HR employees or HR managers, and we're all looking at learning technologies. We're told by our manager, we must digitize. We have to digitize. Everyone's remote, we've got to digitize. Add technologies, yes. So, and all the HR managers say, okay, learning and development. Manager A says, I need learning technology. So they go and they look at learning technologies and think, oh, they see something that they think is going to work really well, and they build their business case based on the features of the technology. To say, well, against the argument, well, we need to upskill. There's a labour skills shortage, blah blah, and we need to digitize. So this is the best tool. Manager B identifies that the learning that is necessary. They have an older population. It is not a highly mobile population, but the skills issues that they're going to have, it will be magnified because there's no way of capturing that knowledge before the older people leave or share it with younger employees. So the problem that they are looking at is why they're looking at upskilling employees. The problem is a greater chance because they've got older workers who may or may not be as tech savvy or choosing to use technology as part of their learning journey, and a way of capturing the knowledge. Now, they're able to quantify that. They're able to understand and put in a business case much more effectively what the technology will offer them. Okay, we can already see the criteria for that technology will have some type of knowledge management component, a way of capturing the knowledge of existing employees, sharing it with younger employees, at the same time as options around the interface and the modes of delivery. But also, so that already is a better business case, a better choice of technology to be able to get managers to say, yes, we're happy to buy that, because they can see that the tool that has been chosen is defining a quantified problem. So we don't necessarily worry about quantifying the technology, we have to quantify the problem. The next, manager C, however, understands that they've got a younger workforce, highly mobile, that learning and development is as much of a retention tool as a development tool, and the types of, so therefore the types of solution that they're looking for, the type of technology and the functionality is quite different to Manager B. And of course, Manager A, where it looked good. It was a bit of a random sort of shotgun approach to looking for a technology. So you can see between B and C a very different solution, still a learning and development solution, but a very different one for the problem. And both of them are able to quantify their problem to be able to justify the technology, but how they are doing so is quite different. I think another thing that we need to do, so that's the most important thing in my mind to be able to get management to sign off on technology, is understand your problem enough to be able to quantify and define the solution and quantify and the value of the solution that you're proposing. The other thing that's really important is something I've also mentioned before, and this is this cross-functional work. Now, if you go to management, to an exco or something, and asking for money for a technology, and you haven't spoken to legal, risk, IT, obviously, finance, procurement, then you should not be expecting to be approved. You know, when you go for an approval, you should already have socialized the idea and got their input and got their backing on what it is that you're doing before you present it to them. You know, so that it's, first of all, saying no is very hard for them, but it's a good yes, because you're presenting a united front. So if you've not done that before you speak to management about it, go back and talk to the people who are necessary for making sure that costs are managed well, technology is managed well, risks and legal requirements are managed appropriately, and that the process that you are undertaking is consistent with the procurement processes that most companies have in place, specifically for technology. So that for me, they're the two things that are most important to get a yes from management.
Right. Those are some really good tips. But if you were to share 3 important technology-related tips for HR, what would they be?
I'm going to sound repetitive here. Know your problem, know your opportunity, know who it benefits. Be very clear about who it is benefiting. Is it benefiting the business, HR, employees, managers? Who is it benefiting? Be brave. Be brave. Wow. Go and learn about these technologies. Oftentimes we want to take the safe route around technology. But HR, we need to step out of our comfort zone and go and learn about the technologies. Partner with IT. Partner with IT on technology implementations that are not HR technology implementations. Understand the impact of technology on your people, regardless of whose technology it is. Be brave, be courageous, step out of your comfort zone and learn more. It will benefit you in your workplace.
Wow. Be brave, be bold, go ahead and create people magic. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Synergita Webcast. Until next time, wish you all the very best. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.